Have you ever wondered why some relationships, ones filled with love and good intentions, suddenly crumble? It's rarely the explosive arguments or dramatic betrayals that do the most damage. Instead, it's the small, unnoticed habits that slowly chip away at the foundation of trust and connection. Imagine this: you're having what feels like a normal day with your partner, laughing, talking, but underneath the surface, subtle patterns of behavior are quietly unraveling the bond you share. The truth is, these toxic habits often go unnoticed until it's too late. And here's the scariest part: they might already be a part of your daily interactions. But don't worry. Recognizing these habits is the first step to breaking free from them. In this video, we'll uncover 10 toxic habits that destroy relationships without you noticing, and how to replace them with healthier, stronger habits. Relationships are fragile, and sometimes it's not the big, obvious mistakes that cause the most damage. It's the unnoticed, day-to-day habits that silently erode trust, connection, and intimacy. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you or someone you know said, "I don't know what went wrong, it just fell apart"? That confusion often stems from the small, toxic behaviors we overlook. Behaviors that may feel harmless in the moment, but carry lasting consequences over time. In this video, we're uncovering 10 toxic habits that destroy relationships without you noticing. Whether it's with your partner, family, or even close friends, understanding these habits is crucial. Why? Because recognizing them early can help you protect the relationships that matter most and build stronger, healthier connections. But before we get started, if you find value in this video, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It's a small gesture, but it helps us reach more people who, like you, are striving for better relationships. And don't forget to hit the bell icon, so you'll never miss out on insights that could transform your connections for the better. All right, let's get started and uncover the habits that could be silently harming your relationships. Habit number 1. The silent treatment as a weapon. Imagine this. You've had a rough day. Work was overwhelming, and all you wanted was to come home to a safe space, a moment of comfort. But instead, as you walk in, you're greeted not with words, but with a deafening silence. No acknowledgement, no warmth, just an icy wall of indifference. It's deliberate, and it stings. The silent treatment, when used as a weapon, isn't just about withholding words. It's about withholding connection. It's a way of saying, "You don't deserve my attention," without uttering a single syllable. And it's this subtlety that makes it so damaging, so corrosive. Let's explore the emotional impact, how this really affects us on a deeper level. At first, you might try to brush it off, convincing yourself it's just a mood or a phase. But over time, the silence begins to speak louder than any argument could. It creates a chasm, an emotional void, where love and trust once thrived. When silence becomes a punishment, it plants seeds of doubt. Did I do something wrong? Do they even care anymore? It leaves the other person feeling invisible, unworthy, and alone, even in the same room. Resentment builds, communication breaks down, and before long, the relationship feels like a battlefield where words have become weapons, or worse, casualties. Now, let's talk about the practical takeaway, something you can apply right away. Breaking the cycle of the silent treatment starts with one simple act: communicating honestly. If you're the one giving the silent treatment, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, what am I really trying to achieve? Often, it's a cry for attention or an attempt to express hurt, but there are better ways to convey these feelings. Instead of shutting down, try saying, "I need some time to process how I feel. Can we talk about this later?" This small shift shows respect for the other person while honoring your own emotions. If you're on the receiving end, gently address it without escalating tension. Say something like, "I notice you're upset. Can we talk about what's bothering you?" It's important to approach the situation with curiosity, not accusation. Remember, the goal isn't to win the silent standoff, but to rebuild connection and understanding. Before we wrap up, here's a final thought for you. The silent treatment might feel like a way to protect yourself or make a point, but in reality, it's a wall that keeps love and understanding out. True connection comes from vulnerability, opening up even when it's hard. Because in the end, relationships thrive on communication, not silence. Let's choose words over walls and connection over conflict. Habit number 2, constantly playing the victim. Why does everything always happen to me? Imagine this. You've just had a tough day at work, and your friend is sharing a story about their struggles. But before they can finish, you start talking about how unfair life is to you again. Every conversation circles back to your problems, your frustrations, your setbacks. You constantly find yourself at the center of your own pity party. And while it might feel good in the moment, it leaves you stuck. You're not really facing your challenges head on. Instead, you're just staying trapped in a loop of blame. Let's explore the emotional impact, how this really affects us on a deeper level. Why does playing the victim hurt relationships? When you continually cast yourself as the victim, you stop taking responsibility for your actions or your part in a situation. You start to believe that everything is happening to you and that nothing is your fault. This mindset slowly erodes trust. People around you might feel drained, frustrated, or even angry. They start to feel like they're doing all the emotional heavy lifting, and over time, they may stop offering support altogether. Instead of uplifting others with your stories, you pull them down with your constant complaints. The more you focus on what's wrong, the less energy there is for what's right. How does this habit affect you? When you constantly play the victim, you avoid growth. It's easier to blame someone or something else than it is to reflect on your actions or change your mindset. This habit can make you feel powerless, even though you're the one in control of how you respond to life's challenges. Now let's talk about the practical takeaway, something you can apply right away. How do you shift from victim to empowered? Start by changing your language. Instead of saying, "Why does this always happen to me?" Try, "What can I learn from this situation?" This subtle shift moves you from a passive position to an active one. Taking responsibility for your feelings, actions, and responses is a powerful first step toward breaking free from this cycle. If you notice yourself slipping back into the victim role, stop and ask, "What can I do to make this better?" Or, "What part did I play in this, and how can I change it going forward?" This approach doesn't dismiss the challenges you face. It simply helps you regain control and move towards solutions. It's not about ignoring problems, but about facing them with a mindset of growth and self-empowerment. Before we wrap up, here's a final thought for you. You are not a victim of your circumstances. The most empowering thing you can do for yourself is recognize that you have the power to change your perspective, your actions, and ultimately, your life. Instead of focusing on what's wrong, focus on what you can do to make it right. Every challenge is an opportunity to learn, grow, and evolve. It's time to stop playing the victim and start playing the hero in your own life story. Habit number 3, neglecting emotional check-ins. How are you really feeling? We live in a fast-paced world where it's easy to overlook the simple but powerful act of checking in with ourselves emotionally. We push our feelings aside, convinced that if we ignore them, they'll go away. But they don't. They build up until they spill over at the most inconvenient time. Imagine this. You've been feeling overwhelmed, stressed, maybe even a little anxious, but you don't pause to acknowledge it. Instead, you dive straight into work, socializing, and keeping yourself busy. Then, one evening, a small comment from a friend or family member sends you into an emotional spiral. The truth is, your feelings had been building up for weeks, but you never took the time to check in with yourself. Let's explore the emotional impact, how this really affects us on a deeper level. What happens when you neglect emotional check-ins? When you neglect your emotions, you create a disconnect between your inner self and the outside world. You might start feeling numb or disconnected from those around you, unable to fully engage in relationships or even recognize what's causing your stress. This habit doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. Those who care about you might notice that you're not your usual self, but when they ask if everything is okay, you respond with, "I'm fine." The more you brush off your own emotions, the harder it becomes for others to connect with you on a deeper level. Over time, this emotional disconnection can lead to feelings of loneliness and frustration. You may find yourself lashing out or withdrawing from people, all because you never took the time to check in with yourself and process your feelings in a healthy way. Now let's talk about the practical takeaway, something you can apply right away. How do you start checking in with your emotions? The first step is awareness. Take a few moments each day to pause and ask yourself, how am I really feeling? It can be as simple as sitting quietly for a minute before your day begins or before bed to check in with yourself. When you notice emotions bubbling up, don't ignore them. Take a step back and reflect. Why am I feeling this way? What's causing these emotions? Journaling is a great tool for this. Writing your thoughts down allows you to clarify and understand your feelings. You don't need to fix everything right away. The goal is to recognize and acknowledge your emotions rather than suppress them. Sometimes just giving yourself permission to feel what you're feeling is the first step toward emotional clarity. Before we wrap up, here's a final thought for you. Emotions are not to be ignored. They are signals. By neglecting emotional check-ins, you're essentially ignoring the signals your mind and body are trying to send you. Your emotions are there for a reason, to guide you, protect you, and help you make decisions that align with your true self. Start making emotional check-ins a habit today. It's not about perfection, it's about awareness. Recognizing your emotions doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong, in control, and fully engaged in your life and relationships. Habit number 4, overcommitment to technology. When technology takes over your life, in today's digital world, it's almost impossible to escape technology. Phones, computers, social media, they're all at our fingertips. But what happens when we become too dependent on them? Let's paint a picture. Imagine this. You're sitting at dinner with your family, but instead of connecting, you're scrolling through social media. Your partner is talking, but you're distracted by the latest notifications. Your kids ask you a question, but you're still glued to the screen, barely acknowledging them. It's as if the real world has faded into the background and the virtual one has taken its place. Let's explore the emotional impact, how this really affects us on a deeper level. How does overcommitment to technology affect you? Overcommitment to technology doesn't just drain your time, it can drain your emotional energy too. It chips away at your relationships, making it harder to connect with people face to face. You might not notice at first, but over time, this lack of emotional presence creates distance between you and those who matter most. The irony is that technology, which is meant to connect us, often isolates us. The constant barrage of notifications and updates pulls your attention away from what really matters, the people right in front of you. This subtle disconnect builds resentment and frustration, leaving you feeling more disconnected than ever. Now let's talk about the practical takeaway, something you can apply right away. How can you reclaim your time and attention? The first step to breaking free from this habit is awareness. Ask yourself, how much time am I spending on my phone or other screens today? Take a mental note of when you tend to reach for your phone and how it affects your mood. Try setting boundaries for technology use. For instance, designate certain times for checking emails or scrolling through social media, and be firm about limiting tech use during meals, family time, or when you're engaging in personal conversations. A powerful tip: Create tech-free zones, a space where technology is put away, like the dinner table or the bedroom. Use this time to reconnect with yourself and others. These breaks will help you become more present in your relationships and will make those moments feel more meaningful. Before we wrap up, here's a final thought for you. Technology is a tool, not a master. When technology controls your life, it takes away your ability to be fully present in the moment. But when you control it, you're free to use it for good, without letting it interfere with the real connections and experiences that matter most. Start setting clear boundaries today. You'll find that taking a step back from technology actually brings you closer to the things that truly matter: your relationships, your well-being, and your peace of mind. Habit number 5, keeping score in arguments. When winning the fight becomes more important than finding peace, it happens in the heat of a disagreement. You argue about the same old issues, but this time you remember every mistake your partner or friend has ever made. They said something hurtful 3 months ago, or they didn't call when they said they would last week. You keep track of these things. The score is getting higher in your mind with every point you bring up. Let's take Sarah, for example. She's in an argument with her husband, James. She's frustrated because he forgot their anniversary again. Instead of focusing on how they can work through the issue, Sarah starts bringing up everything James has ever done wrong. Remember last year when you promised to take care of the car? And last month, you didn't even pick up the groceries I asked for. Each new point adds fuel to the fire. Instead of resolving the problem at hand, they're now fighting about everything and nothing ever gets resolved. Let's explore the emotional impact, how this really affects us on a deeper level. How does keeping score affect your connection? Keeping score in arguments shifts the focus away from solving the problem to winning the fight. It's no longer about resolving a conflict, it's about proving who's right and who's wrong. This toxic habit undermines trust and empathy, turning a conversation into a battlefield. When we keep score, we stop listening, we stop understanding, we start using past mistakes as ammunition, which makes it harder to see our partner, friend, or family member as someone we care about. We become so focused on getting our point across that we forget to address the feelings behind the argument. The result? We erode the emotional foundation of the relationship, turning simple disagreements into ongoing wars of words. The trust that was once there slowly begins to fade. Now let's talk about the practical takeaway, something you can apply right away. How can you break the habit of keeping score? The first step is to recognize the habit as it happens. When you feel the urge to bring up past grievances during an argument, stop and ask yourself, am I addressing the current issue or am I trying to win? Instead of focusing on old wounds, make a commitment to address one thing at a time. Stick to the current issue. Use "I feel" statements such as, I feel hurt when you forget important dates because it makes me feel unimportant. This focuses on your feelings and avoids dragging the past into the present. A powerful practice. Let go of the scoreboard. In healthy relationships, winning is about solving the problem together, not about keeping track of who's been right or wrong more often. Each argument should be a chance to deepen understanding and trust, not to tally victories. Before we wrap up, here's a final thought for you. True connection doesn't need a scorecard. When you stop keeping score, you free yourself from the burden of constantly looking back at past mistakes. Instead of arguing to win, you argue to understand. This shift brings healing, clarity, and deeper connection. Start practicing this today. The next time you're in an argument, focus on the present moment and keep the conversation open, honest, and kind. You'll find that the more you let go of the past, the stronger your relationship becomes. Habit number 6, passive-aggressive behavior. When silence speaks louder than words. Have you ever been in a situation where someone is upset with you but doesn't directly say it? Instead, they give you the cold shoulder. make sarcastic comments, or drop subtle hints that you should be able to read between the lines. This is passive-aggressive behavior, a toxic habit that many of us resort to when we don't feel comfortable expressing our true feelings. Take Mark, for example. He's frustrated with his colleague Sarah, who keeps taking credit for his ideas in meetings. Instead of confronting her directly, he decides to make snarky remarks like, "Oh, I guess that's just the way we do things around here now," whenever she brings up an idea that's his. He doesn't say anything outright, but his tone and behavior are clear. He's upset. Let's explore the emotional impact, how this really affects us on a deeper level. How does passive-aggressive behavior erode trust? At first glance, passive-aggressive behavior might seem harmless. After all, it's just a comment here and there or some indirect gestures, right? But over time, this behavior can quietly destroy trust in relationships. When we use passive aggression, we avoid direct communication, leaving the other person to guess at what's really going on. This uncertainty creates confusion, frustration, and ultimately, disconnection. In Mark's case, Sarah begins to notice his behavior, but instead of addressing the issue head-on, she starts distancing herself. She doesn't understand why Mark is being so distant and sarcastic. She feels like she can't trust him to communicate openly. This distance leads to tension, erodes mutual respect, and creates an emotional barrier. Passive-aggressive behavior makes it difficult to understand each other's true feelings, and it keeps us stuck in a cycle of unresolved tension. Over time, it becomes harder to maintain healthy, trusting relationships when there's always a subtext lurking beneath the surface. Now, let's talk about the practical takeaway, something you can apply right away. How can you break free from passive-aggressive behavior? The first step is recognizing when you're engaging in passive aggression. If you find yourself avoiding direct confrontation, making sarcastic remarks, or silently stewing in your emotions, it's time to pause and reflect. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling? What do I need from this situation? Instead of dropping hints or letting anger fester, practice direct communication. If something is bothering you, say it clearly and respectfully. For example, Mark could say, "Sarah, I noticed that you've been presenting ideas in meetings that I've shared with you. It's important to me that we're both acknowledged for our work." This approach opens the door for a healthy conversation and avoids the emotional chaos of passive aggression. One useful technique, I feel because. This simple formula allows you to express your feelings without sounding accusatory. For instance, I feel frustrated when I don't get credit for my contributions because it feels like my work is being overlooked. This helps avoid blame and opens the door to real dialogue. Before we wrap up, here's a final thought for you. Directness is the bridge to deeper connection. When you choose to express your feelings honestly and directly, you build stronger, more authentic relationships. Passive aggression might seem like an easy way out, but it only keeps you stuck in a cycle of miscommunication and hurt. Start today by addressing things head-on. Practice speaking your truth with kindness and clarity. You'll find that with every direct conversation, trust deepens and connection strengthens. Let go of the silence and embrace the power of honest communication. Habit number 7, lack of genuine appreciation. When gratitude becomes an afterthought. Imagine this. You've been working tirelessly on a project at work, pouring your time and energy into it. You finally complete it, and the moment you present it to your boss, they glance over it briefly and move on to the next task without a word of acknowledgement. No thank you, no great job, just silence. Or picture this. Your partner plans an elaborate surprise dinner for you, arranging everything from the food to the decorations. When it's over, you don't say much. You're grateful, but you don't express it. You just move on with the day as if it was nothing special. This lack of genuine appreciation might seem harmless at first. After all, you're busy, right? But over time, it starts to wear down relationships and self-worth. Let's explore the emotional impact, how this really affects us on a deeper level. How does a lack of appreciation erode trust and connection? When appreciation is missing, it can feel like all the effort you put into a relationship or project is invisible. It creates a subtle but deep sense of being undervalued and unimportant. Whether it's at work, home, or in friendships, everyone craves validation. Without it, frustration builds. Take Sarah and James. Sarah always feels like her efforts go unnoticed at work. She stays late, puts in extra hours, and takes on difficult tasks. But her boss never acknowledges her hard work. She starts to feel disheartened and disconnected from her job. Over time, this lack of appreciation makes her disengage, and she begins to question her place at the company. In personal relationships, this lack of appreciation can be even more damaging. James might feel like his thoughtful gestures or little acts of kindness are going unnoticed by his partner. Eventually, he becomes resentful and distant, even though he still loves her. When appreciation is absent, it breeds a sense of isolation and unspoken disappointment. Now, let's talk about the practical takeaway, something you can apply right away. How can we break free from the habit of not showing appreciation? The key to overcoming this toxic habit is making appreciation a consistent and genuine part of your interactions. Take a moment to reflect on what others do for you and express your gratitude clearly. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It can be as simple as saying, "I really appreciate your help with that," or "Thank you for making time for me." Here's a simple exercise. Take a few seconds each day to actively acknowledge something you appreciate about the people around you. It can be something small, like thanking your partner for their support, or something bigger, like expressing gratitude for a team member's effort. Another technique, be specific. Instead of just saying, "Thanks," try saying, "Thank you for staying late to help me with this." It really made a difference. Specific appreciation feels more genuine and heartfelt. Before we wrap up, here's a final thought for you. Gratitude is the glue that holds relationships together. Genuine appreciation is the foundation of trust and connection. When you consistently show appreciation, you not only lift others up, but also build stronger, healthier relationships. So today, make a commitment to actively express your gratitude. Don't wait for big milestones. Celebrate the small moments. This habit of appreciation will create a ripple effect of positivity in your life and the lives of those around you. Remember, appreciation isn't just a gift you give others. It's also a way to nourish your own soul. Habit number 8, invalidating each other's feelings. When empathy falls short and feelings are dismissed. Imagine this. You're feeling overwhelmed after a tough day at work. You tell your partner how drained you are, hoping for understanding. Instead, they respond with, "It's not a big deal. Everyone has bad days." You're left feeling unheard and frustrated, your emotions brushed aside. Or consider this. A friend shares their struggles with you, pouring out their heart about a personal issue, and you reply with, "Well, you shouldn't have done that in the first place." Suddenly, what they're feeling is dismissed, and they retreat inwardly, unsure of whether their emotions even matter. In both scenarios, the key issue is invalidation. When someone's feelings are dismissed or belittled, it sends the message that their emotions aren't worth acknowledging. This behavior can seem minor at first, but over time, it deeply damages the emotional connection between people. Let's explore the emotional impact, how this really affects us on a deeper level. How does invalidation erode trust and connection? When we invalidate others' feelings, we unintentionally diminish their sense of self-worth. It may not feel like a big deal in the moment, but over time, it wears away trust and makes people less likely to open up. Take Sarah and James. Sarah had a long day and was frustrated with how little her team had supported her. She confided in James, but instead of listening, he brushed it off. "That's not really a problem," he said. You're overreacting. James thought he was being practical, but in reality, he just invalidated Sarah's feelings. She didn't feel supported or understood. The next time something bothered her, she hesitated to open up, fearing her emotions would be dismissed again. Invalidation doesn't just shut down communication, it isolates people, leaving them feeling misunderstood and alone. Now, let's talk about the practical takeaway, something you can apply right away. How can we stop invalidating each other's feelings? The key to overcoming this toxic habit is simple: listen and empathize. Instead of jumping in with advice or a dismissal, take a moment to understand the other person's feelings. Reflect on what they're going through before offering your thoughts. Here's a technique you can practice: validation through acknowledgement. When someone expresses their feelings, validate them by simply acknowledging their emotions. For example, instead of saying, "That's nothing," try, "I can see how that would make you feel upset." This small shift creates space for understanding and strengthens the emotional connection. Another approach is to ask open-ended questions. How does that make you feel? Or tell me more about what you're going through. This invites the other person to express their emotions more fully, and you show that you genuinely care. Before we wrap up, here's a final thought for you. Validation is the foundation of emotional connection. Validating someone's feelings is not just about agreeing with them, it's about showing respect for their emotional experience. When we validate, we create an environment where trust and connection can grow. This practice strengthens relationships, builds empathy, and fosters a deeper understanding of one another. So, take a moment today to truly listen to someone's feelings. Don't rush to fix the problem, just acknowledge and validate their emotions. This simple habit will transform the way you connect with others and, in turn, enrich your relationships. Habit number 9, micromanaging and over-criticism. When perfectionism stifles growth and creates distance. Imagine you're working on a team project, eager to contribute. Your boss or colleague, however, insists on overseeing every tiny detail, asking for revisions constantly, and pointing out even the smallest mistakes. Despite your efforts, you feel like you're being watched closely, unable to breathe or make decisions without permission. Over time, it's not just the project that's affected. Your motivation begins to fade, and trust in your abilities evaporates. Or perhaps, in a personal setting, you find yourself in a relationship where your every move is scrutinized. Every decision you make, from the way you dress to how you organize your day, is met with criticism. No matter how hard you try, nothing feels good enough. The constant nitpicking leaves you feeling powerless and disconnected. Let's explore the emotional impact, how this really affects us on a deeper level. How micromanaging and criticism erode trust and connection. Micromanaging and over-criticism don't just kill creativity, they kill trust. When someone constantly hovers over you or criticizes everything you do, it creates an environment of fear and self-doubt. Instead of feeling empowered to take initiative or make mistakes, you begin to second-guess yourself at every step. Take Lisa, for example. She was passionate about a project at work, but her manager constantly reviewed every email she sent, made endless corrections, and criticized her decisions. Over time, Lisa started to lose confidence in her own abilities. Her creativity stifled. She no longer took the risks that initially excited her about the project. The emotional cost of micromanagement and over-criticism is often quiet but significant. It leads to a gradual build-up of frustration, resentment, and disconnection. People feel that their autonomy is stripped away, and their value is only seen in terms of how well they meet others' expectations, not their own potential. Now let's talk about the practical takeaway, something you can apply right away. How to overcome micromanaging and criticism. If you find yourself micromanaging or over-criticizing, it's essential to recognize the emotional toll this habit takes on others. A good starting point is to shift your mindset from control to collaboration. Rather than focusing on small flaws, focus on the bigger picture and the strengths of the person you're working with. Here are some actionable strategies to break free from micromanaging and overcriticism. Number 1, trust and delegate. Trust the people around you. If you find it hard to let go of control, start by delegating smaller tasks and allowing others the space to perform. Remind yourself that no one is perfect and mistakes are part of growth. Number 2, constructive feedback. Instead of pointing out every mistake, offer constructive feedback that helps the person improve. For example, instead of saying, "This is wrong," say, "How about we try doing this differently next time?" Focus on solutions, not just problems. Number 3, recognize progress. Celebrate the small victories and improvements. This not only boosts confidence, but also helps others feel that their efforts are seen and appreciated, even if they aren't perfect. Number 4, open communication. Encourage open and honest conversations. Ask for input and suggestions from others and be open to their ideas. This creates an environment of mutual respect and trust. Before we wrap up, here's a final thought for you. Micromanagement is not about perfection, it's about control. When we micromanage or over-criticize, we attempt to control outcomes, often at the cost of others' confidence and trust. Remember, true growth comes from empowerment, not from stifling creativity or autonomy. By letting go of the need for control and embracing a more supportive, trust-based approach, we can help others flourish and build stronger, more meaningful connections. The next time you feel the urge to micromanage or criticize, take a step back. Focus on empowering others, appreciating their strengths, and fostering an environment where everyone feels valued. This shift will not only enhance collaboration, but will also build deeper, more resilient relationships. Habit number 10, ignoring when stagnation holds you back from your true potential. Imagine you've been in the same job for years, doing the same tasks day in and day out. You've mastered your routine, but you've stopped learning new things. You might have been promoted a couple of times, but it's mostly because you've been there long enough, not because you've pushed yourself beyond your comfort zone. Over time, you start to feel disconnected from your own ambitions. You've stopped growing, but you're too comfortable to make a change. Or perhaps you're in a relationship where you've stopped working on yourself. You no longer challenge yourself to improve your emotional intelligence, to learn new ways to communicate, or to handle difficult situations with patience. It feels easier to stay stuck in the same patterns because change requires effort, and effort can be uncomfortable. Let's explore the emotional impact, how this really affects us on a deeper level. How neglecting personal growth drains your potential. When we ignore personal growth, we stop evolving. The emotional impact is subtle but powerful. At first, it may seem like a harmless choice to stay stagnant, but over time, it can lead to feelings of frustration, dissatisfaction, and regret. You begin to realize that you're not the same person you were a few years ago, but you're also not the person you could have been. Take Adam, for example. He had a great job, but never invested time in learning new skills. Years passed, and while his colleagues advanced and adapted, Adam remained stuck in his old ways. He began feeling frustrated, not just with his job, but with his life. It wasn't just about the job, it was about the realization that he had stopped growing as a person. This stagnation eroded his confidence and left him feeling disconnected from his purpose. In relationships, this habit can cause distance. If you and your partner stop growing together, the emotional connection can start to fade. You might feel like you're going through the motions, but there's no real depth or understanding anymore. It's the feeling of being trapped in a routine without purpose or progress. Now, let's talk about the practical takeaway, something you can apply right away. How to break the cycle of stagnation and embrace growth. If you've found yourself neglecting your personal growth, it's not too late to make a change. The first step is to recognize that growth doesn't always mean massive, dramatic changes. Small, consistent efforts can lead to big transformations over time. Here are some practical steps to reignite your growth. 1. Set small, achievable goals. Start with small, manageable steps. Whether it's learning a new skill, reading a book, or practicing mindfulness, make it a habit. These small goals will build momentum and make growth feel less overwhelming. 2. Invest in self-reflection. Take time to reflect on your life. What areas do you feel stagnant in? Is it your career, your relationships, or your emotional health? Understanding where you are and where you want to be is the first step toward meaningful change. 3. Challenge yourself. Step outside your comfort zone. Try something new, even if it feels uncomfortable. Whether it's taking on a new project at work, having a tough conversation with a loved one, or learning a new skill, pushing yourself to grow can bring new excitement into your life. 4. Learn from others. Surround yourself with people who inspire you. Seek mentors, read books, and expose yourself to new perspectives. Learning from others can fuel your growth and give you the encouragement you need to keep moving forward. Before we wrap up, here's a final thought for you. Growth is a lifelong journey, not a destination. Personal growth isn't a one-time event. It's a lifelong commitment. When you invest in your growth, you open the door to endless possibilities. Growth helps you adapt to new challenges, improve your relationships, and live a more fulfilling life. The next time you feel tempted to settle into a comfortable routine, ask yourself, how can I grow today? Whether it's in your career, your personal life, or your emotional well-being, the choice to grow is always in your hands. Let's quickly recap the key points and inspire some action so you can take this with you and make a change today. In relationships, we often fall into toxic habits without even realizing it. Habits like constantly playing the victim, neglecting emotional check-ins, or overcommitting to technology. These behaviors slowly chip away at the connection and trust between us and the people we care about. They may seem small at first, but over time, they can create distance, misunderstanding, and resentment. Take a moment and reflect. Are you guilty of keeping score in arguments or using passive-aggressive behavior to cope with frustration? Perhaps you've invalidated someone's feelings or found yourself micromanaging and over-criticizing your partner. Maybe you've used the silent treatment as a weapon, or like many of us, you've neglected your personal growth in favor of comfort and routine. These habits don't just harm the people around you, they harm you too. They prevent you from building meaningful, fulfilling relationships and leave you stuck in cycles of frustration and emotional stagnation. But here's the good news. You have the power to break free from these toxic patterns. Change begins with self-awareness and the decision to be better. It's time to take control of your behavior and your relationships. Start by identifying which of these toxic habits you've been holding on to. Are you ready to take responsibility for your actions? To stop playing the victim and start being proactive? To stop invalidating emotions and start validating each other's feelings? Every small change you make can have a ripple effect on the people you care about and on yourself. The truth is, relationships are built on mutual respect, understanding, and growth. It's about creating a space where both you and your partner can thrive together. So take the first step today, make the commitment to change, reflect on your behavior, talk openly with your loved ones, and make choices that lead to healthier, stronger relationships. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights on building stronger relationships and improving your life. Let's work together to make our connections deeper, more meaningful, and healthier. Your future self and the people around you will thank you.